Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
You know, like you need something more. Even when, like, life's pretty good, something just feels off. Like maybe you need a change of scenery or like I don't know, a total internal overhaul.
Yeah, like a reset button almost. I think a lot of us wrestle with that feeling, especially as we get older, this pull between, do I need to change or does everything around me need to change just to find some peace?
Exactly. And that's really what we're diving into today with this piece by Balazs Vendler, Where to Next, it's called. He really gets into that whole dilemma. And his journey, it might really speak to you, especially if you're feeling a bit, I don't know, disillusioned with things lately.
Oh, for sure. And he starts off with this story about motorcycles, kept upgrading like all the time.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's almost like this metaphor for always wanting something better in life. He even says, let me see if I can find the exact quote. For a year, I had peace. Then the feeling came back I needed another one. Something newer, better, stronger, cooler, more masculine, more unique. Something that would make me feel more unique.
It's like he's chasing satisfaction, but only in the material world.
Yeah.
Right? But then the funny thing is he realizes all he really needed was a new helmet.
Right.
It's almost like a joke, right?
Right.
Sometimes the answer isn't this massive life change, but just a little shift, a tweak.
It's such a good analogy because it really gets at how we often try to fix what's going on inside by changing stuff outside. You know what I mean? New car, new job, new city, whatever.
Yeah.
What if we're missing those simpler internal fixes like Vendler with the helmet?
Totally. It makes you think, what are we constantly trying to upgrade in our own lives?
Yeah.
And is it actually getting us anywhere near happy? Have you ever felt that?
Yeah.
That, like, you're always chasing something, but the answer was right there all along.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think everyone's been there at some point in some way. But then Vendler, he takes us to this other country he visited, and it adds this whole other dimension to this idea of finding a better life. He's talking about this feeling of order, peace, trust, things he wasn't feeling back home.
Right. He even says, hold on, there's order, peace.
Mm-hmm.
The way people relate to each other feels entirely different. Is this societal well-being?
Exactly. And he gives that example of the shopkeeper just lending him a truck, no questions asked, just total trust.
Yeah, that was wild. They just gave me a car, well, a truck, with the papers inside. I could have driven anywhere. But the shopkeeper simply said, you'll bring it back, right? Like, wow.
It makes you wonder what it takes to build that kind of trust, that sense of well-being in a whole society. Is it shared values, good systems, strong communities? And how does that tie into our own happiness? Can you even be truly happy if everything around you feels messed up and chaotic?
Such a good point. And it kind of leads into this other struggle that Vendler talks about, feeling like increasingly uneasy with his own surroundings. He says, I don't know who's threatening my home, who wants to take away my security. I don't know who's right. I don't know who's telling the bigger lie. It's like he's overwhelmed with all the information, all the noise, and how divided everything feels.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think especially for people over 40, that resonates a lot. You're constantly bombarded with information from all sides, and it's so hard to know what's true anymore. That kind of uncertainty can definitely make you feel uneasy, like you're on edge all the time.
For sure. And it makes you think about what he said about that other country, how peaceful it felt. It makes you wonder, like, is a healthy society a requirement for a healthy individual? Is there a point where no matter how much you work on yourself, it's just not enough if the environment's toxic?
Right. Like you're swimming upstream constantly.
Yeah, exactly. And Vendler, he goes on to list all these things he does to be a, quote, good citizen. Voting, paying taxes, volunteering, being kind.
Right. Like checking all the boxes.
But he still feels this lack of control. Like he's helpless against these bigger problems.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, I'm doing my part, but is it even making a difference?
Exactly. He even asks, while I try to be a good citizen because the country I live in matters to me, does the state want me to think it's good too? Like he's questioning the whole relationship between a citizen and the state. Almost like he needs reassurance that his efforts are even valued.
It's an interesting point. It highlights this tension we all feel sometimes. Like, you can try to make a difference on an individual level, but at the end of the day, you're just one person in this massive system.
Right. So where does that leave us? Do we just give up and feel powerless? Or do we, like Vendler, keep searching for a way to create a better reality for ourselves and for everyone else?
I think that's the million-dollar question. And it's something we'll keep unpacking as we dig deeper into Wendler's journey. What does it really mean to find that balance between personal change and changing the world around us? And he keeps going with this feeling of being insignificant. In the grand scheme of things, he says, there is a power relationship. I'm just a statistical number, a social security number, a tax number, one vote. Like, he's just a data point, not a real person.
It's like that cog in the machine feeling, right?
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if this is like a modern thing, or have people always felt this way? Like, no matter what they do, they're powerless against these bigger forces, the state or society or even just like the universe itself.
It's a huge question, and it gets at something really basic about being human. Like, we need to feel like we have some control over our lives, like our choices matter. But when you're up against these giant bureaucracies or these global problems that feel impossible to solve, yeah, it's easy to feel small and disconnected.
Yeah, I get that. And Wendler, he brings up this interesting comparison. To bees, he writes, maybe with bees, everyone matters. They matter to each other. It works for the bees. It could work for us, too.
It's a cool analogy because it shows us this different way of being. In a bee colony, everyone has a role, Everyone contributes. It's like built-in purpose and connection, which is kind of the opposite of how our society feels sometimes, right? Lonely, impersonal.
Right. Makes you think, what would it take to create that kind of connection on a bigger scale? Like, can we learn something from bees about how to organize ourselves, how to interact, how to build systems where everyone matters?
It's definitely something to think about, and it goes back to what Wendler said about that other country, how peaceful and trusting it felt. Maybe that comes from a stronger sense of community, of shared responsibility, where everyone feels like their part matters.
That's a good point. But then Wendler, he kind of throws us a curveball. He's like, or maybe I just need a new helmet. It's like he's circling back to that idea that maybe we're overthinking things.
It's almost like he's acknowledging how complex this whole thing is. On one hand, he's wrestling with these huge problems, how messed up things are, how little control we have. But then he's also open to the idea that maybe just changing our perspective, our outlook, could make a big difference.
It's like that whole be the change thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's not always easy to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're up against these massive challenges.
Definitely not. But I think that's where Wendler's final thoughts are really helpful. He says, let me see. So I'm searching for my answer to what I should do. I just need to figure out what can, should, or is worth changing to satisfy the feeling inside me. What I can change will become clear if I do it. I'm on it. I'm on it to arrive at the we're all good feeling, not just for me, for us. We live together. Let's work on it. Let's change. I definitely will.
There's this real sense of purpose there, you know? Like, he's determined to find solutions, even though he doesn't have all the answers yet. He's committed to the process, to figuring it out.
Yeah, and I love how he makes it about all of us. Like, it's not just about individual change, but about working together to create a world where everyone feels good. Like, we're all in this together.
It's definitely a hopeful message.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to that big question. How do we balance our own growth with making the world a better place? Can you even have one without the other?
Right. That's the heart of it all. And I think Wendler's journey suggests it's not about choosing one or the other. It's about this back and forth, this constant dance.
It's about knowing we have choices, knowing we can make a difference, but also recognizing that we're part of something bigger, that we need to work together to solve these bigger problems.
It's a lot to think about, and I think we'll explore that more as we wrap up our deep dive into Wendler's search for a better life.
So where do we even go from here? I mean, this whole piece by Wendler really got me thinking. All that stuff about feeling disillusioned, wanting something more, wondering if you need to change yourself or like change the whole world. It's a lot, you know? And I feel like it's something we all deal with at some point, especially as we get older.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's interesting how he uses that motorcycle thing to kind of like bookend the whole piece, right?
Yeah.
It starts with chasing upgrades, then figures out he just needs a new helmet, but then at the very end, he throws it back out there like, maybe I do need a new helmet.
It's like he's saying, hold on, maybe I haven't figured it out yet. Maybe the search isn't over.
Right. Like, it's a reminder that finding a better life, it's not a one-time thing. It's this constant process, you know? You got to keep looking, keep trying new things until you find what really works for you.
Maybe that's like trying on different helmets until you find one that fits.
Exactly. And maybe that's the big takeaway here. There's no easy answer, no magic solution for feeling like, okay, everything's good now. It's about staying curious, trying new things, and always looking for ways to make your inside world and your outside world like match up a little better.
Finding that balance. Right.
Yeah. And it takes work. It's about looking at yourself, making choices, and taking charge of the stuff you can control, but also knowing that some things, you just can't change them on your own. Those bigger problems, it takes all of us working together to fix them.
So maybe sometimes the answers are simpler than we think. Maybe it's just a small change, like in your routine or how you look at things. Or maybe it's about getting back to the things that make you feel alive.
Or finding ways to help out in your community, doing work that matters to you, or speaking up about the changes you want to see in the world. The point is, there's not one right answer for everyone. But even just looking for those answers, that can be a good thing in itself.
So I guess to wrap things up, I want to leave you with a question. What's your new helmet? What's one small change you could make today, or one new way of looking at things that can make your life and the lives of the people around you a little bit better? Think about it. You never know. The answer might be closer than you think.